I never thought I'd be sitting here typing this out, but here we are. My son just turned 16, he had a girlfriend, she was almost 17. They broke up about a month ago. 3 weeks after that, her parents called us. She's pregnant, slightly showing. The dates line up with when they were together. My wife went into full panic mode. I wasn't far behind. We waited a couple days before telling our son. He didn't know. When we sat him down, he looked at us like we'd just told him we were moving to Antarctica. "It's not mine," he said. "I never fucked her." I didn't believe him at first. I knew he was active. He'd come to me for protection before, asked for condoms, the whole talk. I thought I was being a good dad by keeping that line open. But he'd also lied to me about smaller stuff, so when he said they never did it, I figured he was just scared. Then he got angry. Genuinely angry, the kind that makes his face go red and his hands shake. He said, "I cheated on her, Dad, that's why we broke up." And then he told me the whole thing. He said they only ever did a certain act, the kind that can't make a baby, and it was so bad he never went any further with her. He said he always wrapped up with anyone he actually slept with, and he'd asked me for restocks. I remembered that. I had a long heart-to-heart with him. He's an absolute shithead for cheating, I told him that, but I started to believe him. My wife didn't. She said I was playing into his nonsense, that I was part of boy culture, that I was letting him off the hook. We argued about it. Then both families met. My wife started off by accepting that our son was the father. She was already talking about funding, about how we'd help, about co-parenting. Our son spoke up. He said, "It's not my baby, we never had sex." He was loud, he was angry, and then he made a comment that I'll never forget. He said they only did something that couldn't get her pregnant and it was unsatisfactory, so he never went any further. We raged at him for saying that in front of her parents, but he didn't back down. The ex-girlfriend admitted they rarely did anything. She described the one time they were together, the when and where. It sounded believable. I knew my son was a liar sometimes. I knew he was a dog, but I still believed him. My wife stopped talking to me. She said I was enabling him, that I was choosing his word over evidence. She started sleeping in the guest room. I thought about couples therapy, but she said it was useless because she already knew the truth. She already had an agreement with reality. Our son was the father and I was wrong. Then a week later, my son came to me. He was shaking. "Dad, I need to tell you something, and I need you to not hate me." I sat down. He said, "I'm gay. I've been seeing a guy from the next town over. We've been together for about 4 months. That's who I cheated on her with. He's my boyfriend, and I swear to God, we only ever did stuff that's safe. I don't know how else to say it." I just stared at him, then I laughed, not because it was funny, but because everything suddenly made sense. His anger, his certainty, the way he said they never had sex. I told my wife. She didn't believe me at first. She said I was making it up to protect him. So I brought my son to her and he told her himself. He showed her a picture of his boyfriend. She cried, not angry tears, just defeated tears. We ended up taking the ex-girlfriend for a paternity test, not legally, just a private one we all agreed to. The results came back negative. The father was some other guy from her school. She admitted it. She'd been seeing him on the side too. My son was just the easy target. My wife apologized to me. She said she was so scared of the scandal, so scared of being judged for having a teen dad son that she couldn't see the truth. She said couples therapy was useless because she'd already made up her mind. But now she was willing to go, for real this time. We haven't started yet. But we're talking, but that wasn't the only thing going on around that time. A few weeks after the paternity test came back, I got pulled into another mess. My close friend Mark was getting married in a month, literally 1 month away. I'm 30, he's 30, and his fiancée Laura just turned 27. I've known Mark since college. We hang out all the time, and I was starting to get really, really worried. For the first few years of their relationship, I had zero issues with Laura. She was shy, reserved, kind of the quiet one in our loud group. I actually thought it was good for Mark because he's intense, hyper-rational, always wants to argue about everything. He'd sometimes steamroll her in conversations, and I felt bad for her. But then Laura started opening up, especially with my girlfriend Julie. The four of us would go out regularly and it was fun. I thought they were solid. Then the cracks started showing, little things at first. Laura would complain about Mark's parents, how they offered to pay for part of the wedding, but then she said they were being controlling. She'd air their dirty laundry at dinner, stuff Mark clearly didn't want discussed in front of us. She'd snap at him in front of everyone. I remember one night at a restaurant, she told him, "You're so fucking selfish, you never listen to me." Right there, with the waiter standing there, Mark just stared at his plate. I felt my stomach drop. Julie and I started talking about it. She said Laura had been venting to her privately, saying Mark was too logical, too cold, that she couldn't connect with him emotionally. But then Laura also said she wanted something fundamental that Mark didn't know about. Something big. Julie couldn't get specifics out of her. Then 2 weeks before the wedding, I found out. I was at Mark's place helping him pack for the move to their new house. He was in the shower and Laura called his phone. I answered by accident. It was on the counter and I thought it was mine. She said, "Hey babe, I just wanted to make sure you're still okay with the open relationship thing after we're married. I know we said we'd revisit it, but I really need you to be serious about it." I froze. I didn't say anything at first. She said, "Hello, Mark," and I said, "It's me, Mike." Mark's in the shower. There was a long pause, then she said, "Oh, okay, can you tell him to call me back?" And hung up. My hands were shaking. Open relationship. I knew Mark. He's the most monogamous, traditional guy I know. He talks about wanting kids, a white picket fence, the whole deal. I sat there until Mark came out. I told him what I heard. He went pale. He said, Laura told me she wanted to explore an open relationship after the wedding. I said no. I told her I wanted kids, a family, that I couldn't do that. She said she'd drop it. I thought she dropped it. I asked him if they'd actually talked about kids. He said yes, he wanted 2 or 3. She said she wasn't sure but would consider it. But then he found out from Julie that Laura had told her she didn't want kids at all and that she wanted to sleep with other people. Mark looked crushed. He said, I love her, but I can't marry someone who wants a completely different life. I didn't want to be the guy who breaks up a wedding, but I also didn't want to watch my friend get trapped, so I told him everything Julie had told me. He called Laura that night. I heard him shouting, then crying. The wedding was called off 2 days later. Laura's parents were furious, blamed me. Mark's parents thanked me. Mark went through a rough few months, but he's better now. He met someone new last year and she actually wants kids. He told me I saved him from a nightmare. I thought that was the end of the drama for a while, but then I remembered my own story, the one I hadn't fully dealt with. My ex-fiancé left me 2 years ago and I only found out the real reason recently. His name was Jacob. We were together for almost 10 years since we were 2. We were planning our wedding for real. We'd booked the venue, paid deposits, sent save the dates. We were both in our early 30s and had finally agreed to try for a baby. I was so excited, then one day he started acting off. He stopped saying I love you before work. He started coming home late, drinking with his friends. I thought it was his mental health. He'd been struggling since the COVID lockdowns. I sat him down and asked if everything was okay. He said he was fine. I asked if we were okay. He paused, and in that moment I knew. I asked if he still loved me. He said he loved me but wasn't in love with me anymore. Within a week, he moved out. He left 90% of his stuff in our apartment. I had to look at his jacket hanging on the chair every morning. It was a constant reminder that he was gone. I spiraled hard. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I started drinking alone. One night, I took a bunch of pills and washed them down with vodka. I don't remember calling my friend, but she got me to the hospital in time. I spent 3 days in the psych ward. I was so ashamed. I kept thinking, what's wrong with me? Why wasn't I enough? It took months of therapy and medication to get stable. I moved out of the apartment, got a new job, started running. I thought I was over it. Then last month, a mutual friend told me Jacob had gotten married. And his new wife was pregnant. I felt that old twist in my gut. But then the friend said something weird. You know he had a vasectomy reversal, right? I didn't know. I hadn't talked to Jacob since he left, so I asked around. Turns out Jacob had been struggling with infertility for years. He never told me. He'd been seeing a specialist, found out he had a very low sperm count, almost 0. He couldn't give me the baby I wanted. And instead of telling me, instead of letting me decide, he just left. He said to a friend, she deserves someone who can give her a family. I'm not that person. That broke me all over again, not because I was still in love with him, I was, but because he took that choice away from me. He decided what I deserved without asking. He left me in the dark, let me think I wasn't good enough, let me spiral into suicidal depression. And now he's married with a baby. Turns out a reversal worked, so he got everything he wanted except with someone else. I confronted him, I called him and he answered. I said, I know why you left, I know about the infertility. There was a long silence, then he said, I did it for you. I screamed. I said, you did not do it for me, you did it because you were scared. You broke my heart and left me for dead. You don't get to call that love. He started crying, apologized. I hung up. I blocked him everywhere. I told my therapist and she said it's okay to be angry. So I'm angry. I'm not going to let that define me, but I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Couples therapy, paternity tests, calling off weddings, and 10-year lies. Sometimes I wonder if anyone actually knows what they're doing. I know I don't. But I'm still here, I'm still talking, and that's something. But then there was the whole nightmare with my son. I never thought I'd be dealing with a teenage pregnancy at 46, but here we are. My son had just turned 16 back in August 2005. He'd had a girlfriend, she was 16 too, almost 17, but they broke up about a month before we got the news. Her parents called us. She was pregnant, slightly showing. The dates lined up with their relationship. My wife and I went into full panic mode. We waited a couple days before even telling our son. He didn't have a clue. When we finally sat him down, he looked at us like we were crazy. He said, it's not mine, I never fucked her. I didn't believe him at first. I knew he was active. He'd come to me and asked for condoms. I gave him a whole box once. But he kept insisting they never did it. Then he admitted he cheated on her. He was talking around it all vague. I had a heart-to-heart with him and he finally said something that made me pause. He said he always wrapped up and he'd asked me for restocks more than once. I started to believe him. My wife, though, she was not having it. She looked at me like I was enabling him. She said I was part of the boy culture, that I was letting him off the hook because he was my son. We had a huge fight about it. I told her, I'm not siding with him because he's a boy. I'm siding with him because I think he's telling the truth. We had a joint meeting with the ex-girlfriend's parents. My wife started the conversation already accepting that our son was the father. She was talking about funding, childcare, how we'd all have to support them. My son spoke up, angry, saying it wasn't his baby because they never had sex. He was genuinely pissed. Then he made a comment that I'm going to rephrase because it was crude. He said they only ever did a certain act that couldn't result in a baby, and it was so unsatisfactory he never went any further with her. I raged at him for saying it like that, so did her parents. The ex-girlfriend admitted they rarely did it but then described one specific event, the when and where. It sounded believable. I know my son can be a liar, a complete shithead sometimes, but I still believed him. My wife was furious at me. She said I was choosing his story over the girl's, that I was a bad husband. We barely spoke for 2 days, then everything changed. My son came to me one night shaking. He said, "Dad, I need to tell you something. I wasn't cheating on her with a girl, I was cheating on her with a guy. I'm gay." I didn't scream, I just sat there. He started crying, said he'd been scared to tell us that he only dated the ex-girlfriend because he was trying to be normal. He said they never had sex because he couldn't go through with it. He'd been seeing a boy from another school for months. He showed me texts on his phone. They were explicit. He said, "That's why I know it's not my baby." I never touched her like that. I believed him completely. My wife still didn't. She said he could still be lying. He could still have done it. We argued again. She was dead set on making him take a paternity test. I agreed to it just to shut her up. The test came back negative, not his baby. Turns out the ex-girlfriend had been with someone else after they broke up, some older guy. She didn't even know who the father was until the test named him. Her parents were mortified. My wife had to eat crow. She cried, apologized to my son, but the damage was done. He felt like she never trusted him. He moved in with his boyfriend's family for a month. I still feel sick thinking about it. My wife and I went to couples therapy over this. She said the therapist was useless because the therapist agreed with me. Yeah, she actually said that. Couples therapy is useless because his girlfriend already agreed with him. I almost laughed, but I didn't. I just walked out. We're still in a rough spot. My son is out and proud now. He's doing better, but the trust between me and my wife, that's going to take a long time to rebuild. She wanted to believe the worst in him because it was easier. I couldn't do that. That's the thing about family secrets. They don't stay hidden, they come out and they change everything. I thought I'd seen it all, but then I read this post from a woman who was about to ruin a wedding. And honestly, I don't blame her one bit. She was 30, let's call her Sarah. She had this close friend Mark, 30 as well, who she'd known since college. They were tight, hung out regularly. Mark had been with his fiancée, Laura, since grad school, about 6 or 7 years. They'd been engaged for 2 years and the wedding was a month away. Sarah said she'd never had a problem with Laura at first. Laura seemed shy, reserved, which was a little unusual for their group, but fine. In fact, Sarah's only reservation early on was that Mark, who had a strong personality, very rational and argumentative, sometimes seemed to steamroll over Laura. But over the last 2 or 3 years, Laura had opened up. At first, it was great. Sarah's girlfriend, Julie, got close with Laura. They'd all go out together, the 4 of them, or with other friends. It was actually pretty nice. Then things started to shift. Sarah started noticing that Laura was insanely insecure and anxious. She complained about minor things regarding the wedding, Mark's parents, small requests, nice things they did for her. She'd whine about it nonstop. They'd argue in front of other people about really personal stuff. Laura was happy to air their dirty laundry, complain about things Mark clearly wanted private. And she was cruel sometimes, not just snippy, downright unfair to him, even in front of Sarah and Julie. But the thing that really made Sarah stop and think was a fundamental disagreement they had. It was something huge. Mark had always said he wanted kids. He'd talked about wanting to be a dad since college. Laura, on the other hand, had recently started talking about wanting an open relationship. Not just an open marriage, she wanted to explore sexually now before they settled down, and she didn't think kids fit into that plan. Mark was dead set against it. He said he didn't want to share his wife and he wanted a family. They'd been fighting about it for months. Sarah talked to Julie. "Should I say something?" Julie shook her head. "It's not our place, he's going to marry her. He knows what he's doing." But Sarah couldn't shake it. She kept thinking about the way Laura treated him, the way she dismissed his feelings about kids. One night they were all out for dinner. Laura made a nasty comment about Mark's mother right in front of everyone. Mark went quiet. Laura laughed it off. Sarah saw the look on his face like he was trapped. The next week, Sarah invited Mark over for coffee, just the 2 of them. She sat him down and said, "Mark, I need to ask you something. Do you really want to marry Laura?" He blinked. "Yeah, I mean, I love her." "You love her, but are you happy? Because the way she talks to you, the way you two fight about kids and everything else, it doesn't look happy." He got defensive. He said they were just stressed about the wedding, that everyone has doubts, that Laura was just anxious. Sarah said, "Mark, she wants an open relationship. You told me that. Do you really think she's going to change her mind after the wedding? Are you going to give up having kids for her?" He didn't answer. He just stared at his coffee. Sarah said, "I'm not trying to ruin your wedding, but I'm your friend, and I think you're about to make a huge mistake. You deserve someone who wants the same things you do, someone who respects you in front of your friends." Mark asked her to leave. Sarah felt sick. She drove home and cried to Julie, "I think I just lost my best friend." The wedding was 3 weeks away. Sarah didn't hear from Mark for 2 weeks. Then she got a text, "Can we meet?" They met at the same coffee shop. Mark was pale. He said, "I called off the wedding." Sarah's heart dropped. "What happened?" "I talked to Laura. I asked her straight up, would she ever want kids?" She said no. I asked her if she wanted an open marriage. She said yes eventually. She said she thought I'd come around. I told her I wouldn't. She said then maybe we weren't right for each other." He laughed bitterly. Just like that, a week before the invites were supposed to be sent out. Sarah didn't know what to say. She just reached across and touched his hand. He said, "Thanks for telling me the truth. I was going to marry her and pretend everything was fine. That would have been a disaster." The fallout was messy. Laura told everyone Sarah had poisoned Mark against her. Some mutual friends took Laura's side. Sarah lost a couple of friends over it. But Mark said he didn't care. He said he felt free for the first time in years. Sarah wrote that post because she was wondering if she did the right thing, if she should have stayed out of it. But reading the comments, most people said she did the right thing. One comment said, "I want to explore an open relationship is not the same as I want kids." And they're right. The wedding got called off. Mark went to therapy. Laura moved out. Sarah and Mark are still friends. He thanked her again last month. He's dating someone new now, a woman who actually wants kids. I read that story and I thought about my own wife, about the way she wanted to believe the worst in our son. I thought about how sometimes you have to say the hard thing even if it costs you. Sarah told Mark the truth and it saved him from a marriage that would have made both of them miserable. I told my son I believed him and it saved our relationship. Therapy isn't useless, but it only works if you're both willing to hear the truth. My wife she wanted a therapist who would take her side. But the truth is, sometimes the truth hurts. And sometimes the only thing you can do is keep walking forward, one step at a time, even if you're walking alone. I read that story and thought about my own marriage, but then I came across another post that stuck with me. This one was from a woman who thought her ex leaving her was all her fault. Turned out he just didn't want a baby with her, but not for the reason you'd think. She was 33, let's call her Emma. She'd been with her ex-fiancé, Jacob, for almost 10 years. They met in their early 20s, moved in together at 27, got engaged at 30. They were actively planning the wedding and finally agreed to start trying for a baby around late 2003. She was 32 then, him 33. Time was ticking, they said. They were both ready. Then around February 2024, Jacob started acting weird. He'd stop saying "I love you" before leaving for work. He'd come home late, smelling like beer, saying he was out with his buddies. He was drinking more than usual. Emma knew he'd been struggling with his mental health since the COVID lockdowns. He'd lost his job in 2020, had a rough couple years. She figured he was having another downward spiral, so she tried to be patient. She'd ask how he was doing, he'd say fine. She'd ask about them, he'd shrug. One night in April 2024, she sat him down in the kitchen. They just finished dinner pasta, her mom's recipe. She looked at him across the table and said, "Jacob, I need you to be honest with me. Is everything okay?" He wouldn't look at her. "I'm fine." "Is we okay?" He paused. She saw his jaw tight. He didn't answer. She asked again. He finally looked up and said, "I love you, but I'm not in love with you anymore." She didn't scream. She just sat there, fork in hand, the pasta getting cold. She asked why. He said he didn't know. He just felt like they'd grown apart. Within a week, he moved out. He took his clothes, his Xbox, a few books, left behind 90% of his stuff, bookshelves, a dresser, the engagement ring on the nightstand. He said he'd come back for it later. Emma spiraled hard. She stopped eating, stopped sleeping. She called in sick to work for 2 weeks straight. She kept replaying every conversation, every moment. What did she do wrong? Was she not enough, not pretty enough? Not interesting enough, not worth staying for? On a Friday night in mid-May, she hit the bottom. She was alone in the apartment, surrounded by boxes of his stuff she still hadn't thrown out. She wrote a note, 3 sentences. She didn't even say goodbye properly. She took a bottle of pills and lay down on the floor. Her friend Kelly had a key. Kelly came by because Emma wasn't answering texts. She found her unconscious on the living room carpet, called 911, got her to the hospital in time. Emma woke up the next morning in a hospital bed, an IV in her arm, and Kelly sitting in a chair crying. "You scared the shit out of me," Kelly said. Emma started crying too. She didn't want to die, she just didn't want to hurt anymore. She spent a week in the psych ward. Then she did outpatient therapy 3 times a week. She started antidepressants. Slowly, she started eating again. She moved out of the apartment, too many memories. Found a smaller place, a studio with a window that faced a tree. By September 2024, she was functioning. She went back to work. She started running. She joined a book club. She even went on a few dates, nothing serious, just coffee. You thought she was healing. Then in January 2025, she ran into an old mutual friend at a grocery store. The friend's name was Sarah and they hadn't spoken since the breakup. Sarah looked awkward, like she had something to say but didn't know how. "How are you?" Sarah asked. "I'm okay," Emma said. "Getting there." Sarah hesitated. "Look, I don't know if I should tell you this, but Jacob's having a baby." Emma's stomach dropped. "What?" "He's with this girl from his gym. She's due in March." "I'm sorry, I thought you should know." Emma felt her knees go weak. She leaned against the vegetable cooler. "He left me because he wanted kids, didn't he?" Sarah nodded. "He told me once after the breakup that he didn't think you could have kids. He said you'd been trying for months and nothing happened. He said he didn't want to wait around." Emma remembered the trying. They'd only been trying for 3 months, 3 months. She'd mentioned maybe they should see a specialist, but he said they were fine, it was early. She'd even had an appointment scheduled for the week he left. He never showed up to it. That night, Emma went home and cried. But this time, it wasn't sadness. It was anger, raw, hot anger. He left her because he assumed she was infertile. After 3 months of trying, he didn't even bother to find out. He just went out and knocked up someone else. She wrote a long post on Reddit just to get it out. She didn't expect anything, but the comments flooded in. People were furious for her. One comment said, "Fuck off, Jacob." That became her mantra. A few weeks later, she missed her period. She thought it was stress, but it kept not coming. She bought a test, took it in her bathroom, and stared at the 2 pink lines for a full 5 minutes. She was pregnant. She went to the doctor. They did an ultrasound. Everything was fine. The doctor said, "You've got a healthy pregnancy here. No issues at all." Emma broke down in the office, not from sadness, from relief, from fury, from everything. She could get pregnant. She was pregnant. And Jacob had thrown away a 10-year relationship because he didn't have the patience to wait 3 more months. She didn't tell him she didn't want him back. She didn't want him anywhere near her baby. She told Kelly, and Kelly screamed with joy. Then she told her mom, who cried. The father. There wasn't one, not in the traditional sense. She'd had a one-night stand in November with a guy from the book club. It wasn't serious. He was nice, but they both knew it was just a night. He didn't even know about the baby. She decided she'd raise it alone. She had a good job, supportive friends, a mom who was already knitting blankets. She posted an update on Reddit. "I learned the real reason my ex left me. He thought I was infertile. I just found out I'm pregnant. Fuck off, Jacob." The post blew up. People sent her congratulations and curses for her ex. She laughed and cried reading them. Months later, she gave birth to a healthy baby girl. She named her Hope. She sent a photo to Sarah, said to pass it along to Jacob if you want. She never heard back. I read that story and thought about my own wife, about the way she wanted to believe the worst. Emma's story reminded me that sometimes the people who leave think they know everything, but they don't know shit. And sometimes the people who stay, they find out the truth and it sets them free. I still think about couples therapy. My wife and I are still in it. But after reading that, I realized I can't make her hear the truth. I can only keep telling it and hope one day she's ready to listen. Meanwhile, my son is doing better. He and his boyfriend are still together. They talk about moving in after graduation. I'm proud of him. And Emma, she's doing fine too. She's got a daughter, a new apartment, and a middle finger to the past. That's the thing about truth. It comes out eventually. And when it does, you either face it or you walk away. But you can't pretend it isn't there. I thought I had my own truth to deal with until I read another story that hit close to home. This one wasn't about a husband or a son, it was about a friend. A woman around 30 who knew her best friend was about to marry the wrong person, and she had to decide whether to say something. Her name, let's call her Sarah. She'd known Mark since college. They were both English majors at a state school in Ohio. Same study groups, same late-night coffee runs, same terrible poetry workshops. They stayed close after graduation, weekly phone calls, holiday dinners, the kind of friendship where you don't have to explain yourself. Sarah's girlfriend Julie joined their circle a few years in, and everything felt solid. Mark met Laura in grad school. She was quiet at first, shy. Sarah thought she was fine, a little reserved, but Mark seemed happy. They dated for 6 or 7 years, got engaged 2 years ago. The wedding was set for September 2014, about a month from the date Sarah posted. For the first few years, no red flags. Laura was just the quiet girlfriend who sat back at parties. But over time, she started opening up, and that's when things got weird. Sarah and Julie started double dating with them. Dinners, concerts, weekend trips. At first, it was great. Laura talked more, she made jokes, she seemed to fit in, then the cracks appeared. Laura would bring up personal stuff in public. Mark's dad had made a comment about the wedding cake, something small, like maybe try a different flavor. Laura brought it up at a dinner party with 5 other people, going on for 20 minutes about how controlling his parents were. Mark tried to change the subject. She kept going. Another time, Mark mentioned he wanted 3 kids. Laura laughed loudly and said, "Yeah, if you can find someone willing to push those out." Sarah noticed the pattern. Laura would needle him in front of others. She'd roll her eyes when he talked about his job. She'd interrupt him mid-story. And Mark would just sit there, smiling tightly, not defending himself. Sarah talked to Julie about it. Julie said, "I've seen her get really mean when they're alone." She called him a coward because he didn't want to go to her cousin's wedding. They started comparing notes with other friends. Turned out everyone saw it. Mark's best man Tom said Laura had screamed at Mark in the car after a pre-wedding brunch. The argument was over something petty. Mark had made a joke about her mother's cooking. She told him he was emotionally stunted and would never be a good father. But the real issue was bigger. Mark and Laura had a fundamental disagreement, something you can't compromise on. Sarah found out because Julie got drunk with Laura one night and Laura spilled it. Laura didn't want kids, ever. She wanted an open relationship, said she felt stifled and wanted to explore. Mark wanted kids. He wanted a monogamous marriage. He'd told Laura this early on. She'd agreed. Now she was changing the deal. Sarah sat on this information for weeks. She didn't know what to do. She loved Mark like a brother. She couldn't watch him marry someone who would make him miserable. The wedding was 4 weeks away. Invitations were sent. The venue was paid for. Sarah made a decision. She texted Mark, "Can we grab coffee, just us?" They met at a diner near campus. Sarah ordered black coffee. Mark ordered a milkshake. He looked tired. "What's up?" he asked. Sarah took a deep breath. "Mark, I need to tell you something, and you're not going to like it." She laid it out, everything, the open relationship thing. The no kids thing, the way Laura treated him in public, the comments from other friends, the screaming in the car. Mark stared at his milkshake. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he said, "I know she doesn't want kids. She told me last month. I thought we could work it out." "Work it out how? You can't compromise on having kids." "We talked about adopting or being child-free. I don't know." "Mark, she wants an open relationship." He looked up. "She said that?" "Yes." Julie heard it directly. Mark's face went pale. He put his head in his hands. "I feel like an idiot," he said. "You're not an idiot. You're someone who loves her. I thought if I just tried harder, she'd come around." Sarah reached across the table. You can't try someone into wanting the same things, that's not how it works. Mark canceled the wedding 3 days later. He told Laura they needed to talk. She cried, she begged, she promised to change, but Mark had already made up his mind. He said he couldn't marry someone who wanted a different life. The fallout was brutal. Laura's mom called Mark's mom, screaming. The venue lost half the deposit. Friends took sides. Sarah lost a few mutual friends who thought she'd meddled, but Mark thanked her. He said, "You saved me from a decade of misery." A year later, Mark was dating a woman named Emily. They got married in 2006. They have 2 kids now. Sarah is the godmother. I read that and thought about how often we stay quiet when we see someone heading for a disaster. We don't want to be the bad guy. We tell ourselves it's not our business. But sometimes speaking up is the only thing that saves someone. I wish someone had spoken up for me or for my son, but I guess that's why I'm telling this now. So maybe someone reading this will find the courage to say the thing they're scared to say. Because staying quiet doesn't make you a good friend, it makes you a bystander. I still go to therapy. My wife and I are still in couples counseling. She still says it's useless, but I go anyway. I talk, I listen, and I keep telling the truth. Maybe that's all any of us can do. I thought about Sarah and Mark for days. It made me wonder how many times people see the train coming but don't yell. I wish I had someone like Sarah in my corner, someone who would have pulled me aside before I married my wife and said, "Hey, she's going to pick the worst interpretation every time. Are you sure?" But I didn't. I married her. And here we are. After I read that friend's story, I went to therapy alone that week. My wife said she had a headache. I sat in the waiting room and scrolled through my phone looking at the updates on that infertility story. The one about Emma. The one who found out she was pregnant after her ex left because he thought she couldn't have kids. I wanted to see if there was more. There was. Emma posted again about 6 months after her baby was born. She said she'd gotten a message from her ex's new girlfriend, Sarah. The girlfriend wrote, "Jacob saw your post. He's been in a dark place. He wants to talk." Emma said she thought about it for a day. Then she replied, "Tell him I'm busy raising the child he abandoned. He can talk to my lawyer." Sarah wrote back, "He's sorry. He didn't know." Emma wrote, "He didn't ask. He assumed. That's the whole problem." She never heard from them again. But she said something that stuck with me. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. I spent 10 years believing he was just going through a phase, but he was telling me he didn't value me enough to check, and I ignored it. I read that and looked at my wife asleep on the couch. She didn't believe my son. She didn't believe me. She believed the worst. I thought about those words. Believe them the first time. Maybe that's what I need to do. I went to the next therapy session alone again. My therapist asked, "How would you feel if your wife never changes?" I said, "I'd feel like I'm living with a stranger who thinks I'm a liar." She said, "That sounds lonely." I said, "It is." The next day my son came over for dinner. He brought his boyfriend Ryan. They'd been together for almost a year. My wife made pasta. She was civil but cold. She asked Ryan about his job, his family, his future plans. He answered politely. She didn't smile. After dinner my son pulled me aside. "Dad, I think Mom still doesn't believe me." "I know," I said. "She thinks I got that girl pregnant. She thinks I'm a liar." "I know. Are you going to stay with her?" I didn't have an answer. I still don't. That night I read another story. This one was old, from back in 2004. A woman named Sarah, like the one I already told you about, but this was different. It was about a friend who'd seen his buddy get married and then watched the marriage fall apart because the wife wanted kids and the husband didn't. Wait, that's not right. I'm mixing them up. Let me slow down. There was another story I found in the comments on one of those updates. A man named Derek. He wrote that his best friend Tom married a woman named Lisa. They seemed perfect. But after the wedding, Lisa changed. She stopped working. She spent money like it was water. She kept Tom away from his friends. Derek saw it happening and said nothing because he didn't want to meddle. 2 years in, Tom found out Lisa had been hiding credit card debt, over $40,000. She lied about her salary before they got married. She said she was a manager. She was a cashier. Tom had paid for everything. Tom divorced her. It cost him his savings, his house, his peace of mind. Derek wrote, "I watched the whole thing. I told myself it wasn't my place, but I was wrong. I should have said something before the wedding. I should have said, 'Hey, are you sure about her finances?' I didn't, and now my friend is starting over at 40. That comment got hundreds of upvotes. People agreed. Some said, "It's never your place to interfere." Others said, "It's always your place if you care about the person." I thought about Derek, and Sarah, and Emma, and myself. I don't know what I'm going to do. I love my wife. But I'm starting to wonder if love is enough when trust is gone. I went home that night. My wife was already in bed. I sat on the edge and said, "Can we talk about what happened with our son?" She turned away. "I don't want to talk about it." "I think we need to." "He lied," she said. "He's a liar." "He didn't, and you know that now." She was quiet. Then she said, "Even if it's not his baby, he's still a cheater. He cheated on that girl. He's not innocent. He's 16. He made a mistake, but he's not a bad person." She didn't answer. She rolled over. I lay there staring at the ceiling. I thought about the story I read that day. The one about the woman who found out her ex left because he thought she was infertile. She didn't scream. She just got a test. She proved him wrong, and then she moved on. Maybe that's what I need to do. Prove my wife wrong, not by yelling, not by arguing, but by living my truth. I'm still not sure what that means, but I'm getting closer. The next morning, I made coffee. My wife came downstairs. She looked tired. She said, "I'm sorry about last night." I said, "I know. I don't know how to fix this." Neither do I. We stood there in silence. The coffee dripped, the dog scratched at the door, life kept going. I thought about Emma, I thought about her daughter, Hope. I thought about the middle finger she raised to the past. Maybe I need to do the same. This isn't over, I don't know how it ends. But I'm going to keep showing up to therapy, keep telling the truth, and keep believing my son. Because at the end of the day, that's all I've got, the truth. And I'm not letting anyone take it from me. I thought about Sarah and Mark all the way to work that morning. I kept seeing that line about how Mark said, "You saved me from a decade of misery." That hit me hard because I'm sitting here 10 years into my marriage wondering how much misery I've already signed up for. I pulled into the parking lot and just sat in my car for a few minutes. My phone buzzed. It was my son. "Hey Dad, can I stay at Ryan's tonight?" Mom texted me saying she doesn't want me at the house until I apologize to her. I called him back immediately. She said what? She sent me this long message about how I disrespected her by lying about the pregnancy and how I need to own up to my mistakes before I can come back home. She knows you didn't lie. The DNA test proved it. She said the test doesn't prove I didn't cheat on that girl. She said I still broke her trust. I wanted to scream. I didn't. I just said, "Stay at Ryan's, I'll handle this." I called my wife at work. She picked up on the third ring. "Hey, I'm busy. We need to talk about the message you sent our son." She went quiet. Then she said, "I'm not going to pretend like everything's fine. He lied to us for weeks." "He didn't lie. He told us the truth from the beginning." "You didn't believe him." "I believed what made sense." "What made sense was your worst assumption about a 16-year-old kid." She hung up. I sat in my car and scrolled through Reddit. I needed something to distract me from the fact that my wife had just hung up on me. I found another story. This one was long. It was about a woman named Chloe who had been engaged to a guy named Derek for 2 years. They were supposed to get married in June. Chloe posted because she'd found out Derek had been hiding a gambling addiction. The story was posted in 3 parts. The first part was Chloe explaining how she'd noticed Derek was always tense around money. He'd check his bank account every hour. He'd get defensive if she asked about their joint savings. She thought it was just anxiety. Then one night he came home at 2 a.m. crying. He told her he'd lost their wedding fund, all $15,000. He'd been gambling online for 6 months. Chloe said she didn't scream. She asked, "How long were you planning to tell me?" He said, "I was going to fix it before the wedding." She said, "You can't fix it, it's gone." The second part was Chloe asking for advice. The comments were split. Some said leave him, others said gambling is a disease, give him a chance. Chloe said she loved him. She said they'd been together 5 years. She said she believed he could change. The third part was posted 6 months later. Chloe updated. She said Derek had gone to therapy. He'd joined Gamblers Anonymous. He'd gotten a second job. They'd postponed the wedding. She said she was cautiously optimistic. But then a few weeks before the new wedding date, Derek came home and told her he'd relapsed. He'd lost another $3,000. He'd taken it from her personal savings account. He'd memorized her password. Chloe wrote, "I looked at him and I didn't recognize him." I asked him how he could do that to me. He said, "I don't know, I just needed the rush." I packed a bag and stayed at my mom's house. The final update was from a year later. Chloe was living in a new apartment. She'd changed all her passwords. She said Derek had emailed her 6 times in the last month asking for another chance. She said she blocked him. She ended with, "I loved him, but love doesn't erase the damage. You can't heal a wound that keeps getting reopened because they can't stop bleeding." I read that line 3 times. You can't heal a wound that keeps getting reopened because they can't stop bleeding. I thought about my wife. Every time we try to talk about our son, she brings up new accusations. Every time I think we're making progress, she finds another reason to doubt him, to doubt me. Maybe she can't stop bleeding either. I went to therapy that evening without telling her. I sat in the chair across from my therapist and told her about the gambling story. She said, "What part of that resonates with you?" I said, "The part where she thought love was enough to fix the problem. But it wasn't, because he kept choosing the addiction." She said, "What's the addiction in your relationship?" I didn't have an answer, but I thought about it. Maybe the addiction is fear. My wife is addicted to the worst-case scenario. She needs to believe the worst so she can prepare for it. She can't let go of the idea that our son got that girl pregnant because if she accepts the truth, she has to admit she was wrong. And she can't admit she was wrong. That would mean she isn't in control. I don't know if that's addiction or just stubbornness. But I know it's killing us. I went home. My wife was watching TV. I sat down next to her. "I talked to our son today." I said, "Okay, he's not coming home tonight. That's his choice. He said you told him he can't come home until he apologizes." She muted the TV. "He disrespected me. He lied to me. He made me look like a fool in front of that girl's family. He didn't make you look like anything. You chose to believe the worst. Don't turn this on me. I'm not. I'm just saying what happened." She stood up. "I'm going to bed. Can we please just talk about this?" "No, I'm tired of talking." She walked away. I sat there alone in the living room. The TV was still on mute. Some commercial was playing. I stared at it but didn't see anything. I pulled out my phone. I opened the Reddit app. I searched for more stories about people who stayed too long. I found one about a man whose wife had been cheating on him for 2 years. He only found out because she left her laptop open and he saw a folder of screenshots of text messages. He said he'd had suspicions but ignored them. He said he thought she was just busy with work. He said he thought they were happy. She'd been sleeping with her personal trainer. When he confronted her, she said, "I was going to tell you, I just didn't know how." He asked, "How long?" She said, 2 years. He asked, "Why?" She said, "I don't know, I was bored." He said he packed her bags and put them on the porch. She cried, she begged, she said she'd go to therapy. He said, "You had 2 years to figure out how to tell me you didn't, so I don't believe you would have ever told me." They got divorced. He wrote the update a year later. He said he was doing better. He said he still thought about her sometimes. But he said, "I don't miss her. I miss the person I thought she was." I looked at my wife's side of the bed. She was already under the covers, facing the wall. I thought about that line, "I miss the person I thought she was." I climbed into bed, I lay on my back and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow I'm going to talk to a lawyer just to see what my options are. I'm not saying I'm leaving, but I'm not saying I'm staying either. I'm just saying I'm tired of bleeding. I kept scrolling. The next story was about a woman named Chloe. She'd been with her fiancé for 8 years. They met in college. She thought they were going to grow old together, but then she found out the real reason he left her. She wrote about how he just checked out one day, stopped saying he loved her, started staying out late with the guys, said he wasn't in love with her anymore. She thought it was depression. She thought she could fix it, but then he just moved out, left all his stuff. She said she tried to end her life, landed in the hospital. She said the pain of not knowing why he left was worse than the leaving itself. For 2 years, she carried that weight. She went to therapy. She started dating again, but the question never left her. Then she got a message from his sister. The sister said he'd been in a car accident. He was in the ICU. She asked Chloe to visit. Chloe said she didn't want to go, but she went anyway. She walked into that hospital room and saw him hooked up to machines, thin, pale, like a ghost. He looked at her and started crying. He said he was sorry. He said he'd lied about everything. The real reason he left, he found out he was infertile. He'd gone to a fertility clinic without telling her, got tested. The results came back. Couldn't have kids, and she'd always wanted kids. She'd talked about it since their first date. He said he figured if he couldn't give her what she wanted, he should just get out of her way. He didn't tell her because he didn't want her to pity him. He said he couldn't look at her without feeling like a failure. Chloe sat down in the chair next to his bed. She said she didn't scream. She said she just held his hand and told him she would have stayed. She would have adopted. She would have used a donor. She would have done anything as long as she had him. He said he knew that now, but at the time he couldn't see it. They're not getting back together. She said the trust is gone. But she said she can finally let go of the pain because she knows it wasn't about her. It was about him. I read that and thought about my wife. Sometimes I think she's chasing ghosts. She builds these scenarios in her head where I've failed her, where our son has betrayed us, where everything is falling apart, and no amount of proof can convince her otherwise, because the proof isn't what she's looking for. She's looking for control. I closed the app, put my phone on the nightstand. I turned over and looked at the back of her head, the curve of her shoulder under the blanket. I thought about the friend's story I read earlier, the one about Mark and Laura. That woman watched her friend's relationship unravel and said nothing until it was almost too late. I wonder how many of my own friends have watched me and thought the same thing. How many people have seen the warning signs I chose to ignore? I'm not going to divorce my wife tonight. I'm not going to make any dramatic moves. But I'm not going to pretend anymore either. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to make an appointment with a lawyer. Not to file anything, just to ask, to know what it looks like from the outside. Because I have a son who needs a father who knows when to fight and when to walk away. And right now, I'm not sure which one this is. I closed my eyes. The ceiling fan spun. The house was quiet. I thought about the line from Chloe's story, the one where she said he couldn't look at me without feeling like a failure. Maybe that's where we are. Maybe my wife can't look at me without thinking about all the ways I've disappointed her. All the ways I didn't back her up. All the ways I chose to believe our son over her. But I didn't choose my son over her. I chose the truth. And if the truth breaks us, then maybe it needed to break. I didn't sleep well, but I woke up, I got dressed, I made my coffee, and I called a family law attorney. I didn't tell my wife, not yet, but I'm no longer pretending that I don't see what's happening. I'm just a guy who loved his wife and believed in his son, and I'm trying to figure out what comes next.